Maya had been working at the small-town diner for almost 3 years. Every day felt the same long hours on her feet, carrying plates of pancakes and coffee mugs, smiling at customers even when they were rude, and wiping down tables that never seemed to stay clean for long. The pay was not great, but it was enough to keep her in her little apartment and cover her bills if she worked extra shifts. She dreamed of something bigger, of having her own bakery one day where she could create cakes and pastries that made people smile. But for now, her reality was this diner, the clinking of dishes, and the sound of the old jukebox in the corner. It was late in the afternoon, the slow hours when the lunch rush was gone and the dinner crowd had not yet arrived. The sun outside was beginning to set, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. Maya was standing by the counter, filling salt shakers, when she noticed someone through the wide diner windows. At first, she thought it was just another person walking past, but then she looked again and saw an older woman standing alone near the sidewalk. The woman looked lost. Her eyes darted around as if she wasn't sure where she was. She clutched her small handbag tightly against her chest, her lips moving silently like she was whispering something to herself. Maya frowned. Something about the woman's body language bothered her. Most people walking past the diner knew exactly where they were going. This woman seemed frightened. Maya put down the salt shaker and pushed open the door. The warm air outside hit her face as she stepped out. "Excuse me, ma'am," Maya said gently, not wanting to scare her. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The elderly woman turned to look at her, and her eyes were full of confusion. I don't know where I am," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "I was looking for my house, but I can't find it. I think I forgot the way." Maya's heart sank. She immediately understood what was happening. She had seen it before when her neighbor's father had Alzheimer's. Sometimes he would wander out and not remember how to get home. It broke Maya's heart to see someone in that same state of fear. "That's all right," Maya said kindly. "Don't worry, we'll figure it out together. Why don't you come sit inside for a little while? You look tired." The woman hesitated, then slowly nodded. Maya guided her into the diner, helping her into one of the booths near the window. She brought her a glass of water and sat across from her. Some of the other customers looked over curiously, whispering to each other, but no one else offered to help. "What's your name?" Maya asked softly. The woman took a sip of water before answering. "Margaret," she said after a pause. "My name is Margaret." "That's a beautiful name," Maya said with a smile. "My name's Maya. Do you know where you live, Margaret? Maybe you remember the street or the number." Margaret shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't remember. I know I should know, but it's gone. I don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother at all," Maya said quickly. "You're safe here." She thought about calling the police, but she knew sometimes they didn't handle situations like this with enough care. She decided the best thing to do was try to find out if Margaret had someone looking after her. "Do you have family, Margaret? A son or a daughter?" "Yes," Margaret said slowly. "I have a son. His name is Daniel. He's busy, though. Always busy." "Do you know his phone number?" Maya asked. Margaret's brow furrowed. "It's in my purse," she said, fumbling with her handbag. She pulled out a small piece of paper with shaky handwriting on it. Sure enough, there was a phone number written there. Maya felt a wave of relief. She stepped away for a moment and dialed the number on her cell phone. A woman answered. It was Margaret's caregiver. The caregiver sounded worried and explained that Margaret sometimes wandered off when left alone for even a few minutes. They had been searching for her and were relieved to know she was safe. The caregiver gave Maya the address and asked if she could bring Margaret home, since it wasn't far from the diner. Maya agreed. She returned to the booth and smiled at Margaret. I know where your home is. How about I take you there? Margaret looked at her with childlike trust. Would you? I don't want to trouble you. It's no trouble, Maya said. Let's get you home. When Maya helped Margaret to her feet, a man sitting at the counter chuckled. Why bother? Someone else will come get her eventually, he muttered. Maya ignored him. She refused to let cynicism guide her. She held Margaret's hand gently and led her outside to her old car. It wasn't fancy, it rattled when it started, but it ran. Margaret sat quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window as they drove through the quiet streets. Do you like your job? Margaret asked suddenly, her voice soft. Maya smiled faintly. It pays the bills. But one day, I'd like to open my own bakery. That sounds wonderful, Margaret said. You remind me of myself when I was younger. I used to love baking. My son always asked me to make his favorite chocolate cake. Maya's chest warmed at the thought. Even in her fragile state, Margaret still carried those memories of love. It made Maya glad she had taken the time to help her. They arrived at the house, a neat little home with flowers by the front porch. The caregiver rushed out, clearly relieved. Thank you so much, she told Maya, her eyes wide with gratitude. We were so worried. It's no problem at all, Maya said. She's safe now. Margaret held onto Maya's hand before she went inside. Thank you, dear, she whispered. You're an angel. Maya smiled, her throat tight. Take care, Margaret. She left her phone number with the caregiver, just in case they ever needed help again. Then she drove back to her apartment. The streets were quiet, and the stars were just starting to appear in the sky. She was tired, but her heart felt light. She hadn't done it for recognition or reward. She had simply done what felt right. When she climbed into bed that night, she thought about Margaret's frightened eyes turning into relief and trust. She thought about how sometimes, in a world full of indifference, the smallest acts of kindness could make the biggest difference. Little did she know, that simple decision to stop and help was about to change her entire life in ways she never imagined. The next morning started like any other for Maya. Her alarm went off at 6, the same buzzing sound that had woken her for years. She rolled out of bed, her body still sore from yesterday's long shift. She lived in a small one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, and she could already hear the machines humming below. She dressed in her usual uniform: black pants, white shirt, and her diner apron folded neatly in her bag. As she tied her hair back, she thought about the elderly woman she had helped the night before. Margaret's frightened eyes and gentle smile lingered in her mind. Maya hoped she was doing all right. When she stepped outside, the morning air was cool. She walked to the bus stop with a thermos of coffee in her hand, trying to shake off the fatigue. On the ride to the diner, she overheard two men talking about last night's football game, their laughter filling the bus. Maya stayed quiet, lost in her thoughts. She didn't tell anyone about helping Margaret, not even her landlord or her friends. To her, it wasn't a story to brag about, it was just the right thing to do. By the time she arrived at the diner, the morning rush was already building. Trucks passed by on the highway, and the smell of frying bacon filled the air. The bell above the door jingled constantly as customers came in, some cheerful, some already grumpy before their first cup of coffee. Maya put on her brightest smile and got to work. She refilled mugs, carried plates, and juggled orders with the practiced rhythm of someone who had done this countless times. During a short break, she leaned against the counter, wiping sweat from her forehead. Her co-worker, Carla, noticed she looked tired. You all right, girl? Carla asked, sipping her soda. Yeah, just didn't sleep much, Maya said. Carla smirked. What else is new? You're always running around. One day you're gonna work yourself into the ground. Maya shrugged. Bills don't pay themselves. She thought about telling Carla what had happened with Margaret but decided against it. She knew what Carla would say, that Maya wasted her time, that nobody would do the same for her. Carla wasn't unkind, but she had grown tough from years in the diner business. Maya didn't blame her, but she didn't want her act of kindness to be brushed off either. Around noon, the diner grew quieter. People had gone back to work, and only a few regulars lingered at the counter. Maya was wiping down a booth when she heard the sharp sound of a car door closing outside. Through the window, she saw a sleek black car pull up. It was nothing like the vehicles usually parked in front of the diner. This one shone like it had just left the showroom, with tinted windows and polished chrome details. The engine cut off, and a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out. The chatter inside the diner slowed as people turned to look. He walked with confidence, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. When he opened the diner door, the little bell rang, but the room was already so quiet that everyone noticed his entrance. His presence seemed out of place in the modest diner with its vinyl booths and coffee-stained menus. Maya straightened up, unsure of who he was or why he was there. She assumed he was a businessman passing through town. But then his eyes scanned the diner, and when they landed on her, he walked directly toward her booth. "Excuse me," he said politely, his voice calm but firm. "Are you Maya?" Maya blinked in surprise. "Yes, I'm Maya. Can I help you?" The man gave a small smile, though his eyes looked tired. "My name is Daniel. I believe you met my mother yesterday, Margaret." Maya froze, her cloth still in her hand. "Your mother," she repeated softly. "Yes," Daniel said, nodding. "Her caregiver told me what happened. She said you found my mother lost and scared, and you made sure she got home safely. I wanted to come thank you in person." The whispers in the diner grew louder. Customers leaned in their seats, curious about what was happening. A few exchanged looks as if they had just stumbled into a scene from a movie. Maya felt her face warm. She didn't expect to see Margaret's son, let alone in such a dramatic way. "Oh, it was nothing," she said quickly, trying to wave it off. "Anyone would have done the same." Daniel shook his head. "No, not everyone would have done that. Many people would have walked away or ignored her. You didn't. You stayed with her, comforted her, and even drove her home. That's not nothing." Maya looked down, embarrassed by his praise. "She just needed someone. I couldn't leave her like that." Daniel nodded slowly, his expression softening. For a moment, Maya noticed a hint of guilt in his eyes, like he was carrying the weight of not being there when his mother needed him. "Would you mind if I sat down?" he asked. She hesitated but then gestured to the booth. "Of course." He slid into the booth across from her. Maya could feel the eyes of the entire diner on them, though she tried to act normal. Daniel clasped his hands together on the table. "My mother, she means everything to me," he said quietly. "But I'm often away for work. I rely on her caregiver, but I know that's not the same as me being there. When I heard what happened, I realized how quickly things could have gone wrong. If you hadn't stopped to help her, who knows what might have happened." Maya didn't know what to say. She could see how much he loved his mother, even if his job pulled him away. "I'm glad I was there," she said softly. Daniel studied her for a moment. "Can I ask you something, Maya? Why did you do it? Why go so far for a stranger?" Maya thought about the question. It wasn't easy to answer, but she decided to be honest. "Because I couldn't imagine if it were my mother," she said. "She raised me to believe that kindness is never wasted. If I was lost or scared, I'd hope someone would help me too. So when I saw your mother, I didn't think twice. It just felt right." Daniel's expression changed. Her words touched something in him. He leaned back slightly, letting out a breath. "That's rare," he said. "In this world, most people don't think that way anymore." Their conversation was interrupted when Carla came over, carrying a fresh pot of coffee. She looked at Daniel curiously before setting a cup in front of him. "On the house," she said with a grin, clearly trying to learn more about him. Daniel thanked her politely, but his focus returned to Maya. "I'd like to know more about you," he said. "If you don't mind." Maya raised an eyebrow. "More about me? Why?" "Because you went out of your way to help my mother," he replied simply. "And because people who do good deserve to be seen." Maya hesitated. She wasn't used to anyone paying this much attention to her. Most days, customers barely noticed her name tag. Yet here was a man in an expensive suit, looking at her like her actions actually mattered. She wondered if he was sincere or just being polite, but something in his eyes told her he meant every word. Before she could answer, another customer shouted for a refill, breaking the moment. Maya excused herself and went back to work, though her mind kept replaying the encounter. As Daniel sat there, sipping his coffee, the whole diner buzzed with quiet excitement. Who was this man in the expensive car? And what would his connection to Maya mean? Maya didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The small act of kindness she thought would be forgotten was about to bring changes she never expected. After Daniel left the diner that afternoon, Maya could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her. It was not the kind of look she was used to. Most customers saw her only as the girl who brought food and refilled coffee. Some didn't even look her in the eye when they ordered. But Daniel's eyes had carried something else: curiosity, gratitude, and even a little guilt. That night, when Maya closed the diner and walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, she replayed the entire conversation in her head. She wondered if she would ever see him again, or if that had been a one-time encounter. The next day started as usual. Maya tied her apron around her waist and pushed open the diner doors. The smell of bacon and eggs greeted her, along with the sound of clattering plates. But the moment she stepped behind the counter, she noticed something unusual. Sitting in the same booth as yesterday was Daniel, dressed once again in a suit that made him look out of place among the truckers and townsfolk. Her heart skipped a beat. She had not expected him to return. She tried to act normal as she grabbed her notepad and walked over to his table. "Good morning," she said, forcing a small smile. "Back again." Daniel looked up at her, and this time his smile was warmer. "Good morning, Maya." "Yes, I thought I'd have breakfast here today. I hear the pancakes are good." Maya chuckled lightly. "They're not bad. Do you want the usual coffee with that?" "Please," he said. She jotted down his order and passed it to the cook in the back before returning to the booth with his coffee. She poured it into the cup and set it down carefully. As she turned to leave, Daniel spoke again. "Would you mind sitting with me for a minute when you're free?" he asked. Maya hesitated. It was not normal for her to sit with customers, but something about his tone was respectful, not demanding. She nodded slowly. "When it slows down, I'll join you." It took another 20 minutes before the diner cleared out enough for her to take a short break. She slid into the booth across from him, smoothing her apron nervously. "So," she said, trying to sound casual, "what brings you back here? Surely it's not just the pancakes." Daniel smiled faintly. "No, it's not just the pancakes. I came back because I wanted to know more about you." Maya blinked, caught off guard. "More about me? I'm just a waitress." He shook his head. "No one is just anything. Everyone has a story. And from what I've seen, yours is worth knowing." She looked down at her hands, embarrassed. Nobody ever asked about her life. "There's not much to tell," she muttered. "Then tell me the little there is," he encouraged. What do you dream about? What do you want for yourself? Maya took a deep breath. She rarely shared her dreams with anyone because most people didn't take her seriously. But something about Daniel's sincerity made her feel safe enough to answer. I want to open a bakery one day, she admitted quietly. Not just any bakery. A place where people feel at home. I love baking cakes, pies, bread, everything. But right now, all I can do is work here and save what little I can. Daniel's eyes lit up with interest. That sounds incredible. Why a bakery? Because food brings people together, Maya explained. When you share a slice of cake or fresh bread, you share more than food, you share comfort, love, and memories. My mom taught me that. She used to bake with me when I was little. Those are some of my happiest memories. I want to give that same feeling to others. For a moment, Daniel didn't speak. He just studied her face, as if seeing her not as a waitress but as a person with hopes and ambition. That's a beautiful dream, he said finally. Maya gave a small laugh. Dreams don't pay rent, though. For now, I'm just trying to survive. Daniel leaned forward slightly. But survival isn't all there is. You deserve more than just getting by. His words made her pause. Nobody had ever told her that before, not in that way. She felt her throat tighten, but she quickly brushed it off with a smile. Well, maybe one day things will change. Just then, a group of customers walked in, and Maya had to jump back to work. She hurried from table to table, but the conversation with Daniel lingered in her mind. When she glanced back at his booth, she noticed he was still watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that felt different. He saw her. After finishing his meal, Daniel left money on the table along with a generous tip. As he stood, he told her, "I'll see you again, Maya." And he did. Over the next several days, Daniel returned to the diner more often than not. Sometimes he came for breakfast, other times for lunch. Each time, he sought out Maya and asked about her day, her life, her thoughts. Slowly, Maya grew more comfortable sharing pieces of herself. She told him about growing up with her mother in a small apartment, about the nights they baked cookies together, about how her mother always told her to keep her kindness even when life was hard. She admitted how difficult things were now, working long hours, struggling to pay bills, and barely having time for herself. Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt or judge. He asked questions like he truly cared. It was something Maya was not used to. One afternoon, while the diner was quieter, Daniel asked her again, "Do you ever regret helping my mother that night?" Maya shook her head firmly. "Never. If I had walked away, I wouldn't have been able to sleep. I just did what anyone should do." "Not anyone," Daniel said softly. "You." The sincerity in his voice made Maya's cheeks flush. She turned away, pretending to tidy the table, but her heart beat faster. Around them, the other diners whispered. People in town had started noticing Daniel's visits. Some speculated about who he was. Others wondered why someone like him spent so much time with someone like Maya. She tried to ignore the gossip, but she couldn't deny that she looked forward to his visits too. One evening, as she was leaving work, Daniel was waiting outside by his car. She stopped in surprise. "I thought you might need a ride home," he said. Maya hesitated but then nodded. The bus rides were always long and crowded, and for once, she allowed herself a little comfort. She climbed into the car, and as they drove through the quiet streets, Daniel asked her about the bakery again. "What would it look like if you had it?" he asked. Maya smiled, picturing it in her mind. "It would be warm and welcoming. With big windows so the sunlight comes in. The smell of fresh bread filling the air. Shelves full of cakes and pastries. And maybe a corner where kids can sit and read while their parents enjoy coffee." I want it to feel like home. Daniel listened intently. That's not just a dream, Maya. That's a vision. And visions can become reality. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Maybe for some people. For me, it feels far away. He glanced at her, his expression serious. Maybe closer than you think. Maya looked at him curiously, but before she could ask what he meant, they arrived at her apartment. She thanked him for the ride, and he wished her a good night. But his words echoed in her head long after she closed her door. For the first time in a long time, Maya began to wonder if her life could change, if the dream she had buried under years of hard work and exhaustion might actually have a chance to rise again. And deep down, Daniel was already thinking about how he could help make that happen. The following morning, Maya walked into the diner expecting another ordinary day, but she was met with a surprise that warmed her heart. Sitting in one of the booths near the window was Daniel, and next to him sat Margaret, the elderly woman Maya had helped that night. Margaret looked neat and cheerful, dressed in a floral blouse with her silver hair carefully brushed. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw Maya walk in, as if she had been waiting just for her. Maya froze for a second, then smiled. She walked over to their booth. "Margaret, you're here," she said softly. Margaret reached out with trembling hands, her face breaking into a smile. "There you are, my dear," she said. "I remember you. You helped me. You stayed with me when I was so scared." The diner was quiet at that moment, and several customers turned their heads. They watched as Margaret held Maya's hand with a grip that was surprisingly strong for someone so fragile. The warmth in her voice and the joy in her expression were undeniable. Daniel's eyes softened as he looked between the two women. "She hasn't stopped talking about you, Maya," he explained. "She told me again and again about the kind girl who stayed with her. I had to bring her here so she could see you for herself." Maya's throat tightened. She gently squeezed Margaret's hand. "I'm so glad you're all right. You had me worried that night." Margaret patted her hand and nodded. "I don't remember everything these days," she admitted, her voice quiet. "But I remember you. You were kind. You reminded me of myself when I was younger. I used to help people too, even strangers." The tenderness of the moment touched everyone in the diner. Carla, who had been setting down plates at another table, paused and wiped at her eyes quickly before turning back to her work. Even the cook peeked out from the kitchen, pretending to adjust his hat while secretly watching. Margaret leaned closer to Maya and whispered, "You are like family now." Maya's chest ached with emotion. She had not expected anything in return when she had helped Margaret, but hearing those words filled her with a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. Daniel cleared his throat and looked at Maya seriously. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "I know you tried to brush off what you did as nothing, but it wasn't nothing. You kept my mother safe. You gave her comfort when she was lost. That means more to me than I can ever explain." Maya looked down shyly, unsure of how to respond. "It was just the right thing to do," she murmured. Daniel shook his head. "No. It was extraordinary." The room grew still as he continued. "There's something else you should know. I don't usually talk about this openly, but I want to be honest with you. I'm not just a businessman who travels a lot. I run several companies. I've been fortunate enough to build a successful life. And because of that, I have the ability to help others when I choose to. Meeting you has made me realize I want to do exactly that." Maya blinked, stunned by his openness. She had suspected he was wealthy from his car and clothes, but hearing him admit it so directly made it real. Her heart raced as she wondered where this conversation was leading. "Maya," Daniel said gently, "I know you have a dream. You told me about wanting to open a bakery. I believe in that dream. I believe in you. And I want to help you make it happen." Maya's mouth opened, but no words came out. She stared at him in disbelief, then quickly shook her head. No, no, I couldn't accept that. I don't want charity. Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. This isn't charity. It's an investment in someone who deserves it. You've worked hard your whole life, giving more than you've ever received. It's time someone believed in you. Margaret nodded firmly, still holding Maya's hand. Sometimes kindness comes back to you, she said softly. You gave me kindness when I needed it most. Now it's your turn to be blessed. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She wanted to protest again, but the sincerity in both Daniel's and Margaret's faces silenced her. They weren't pitying her. They truly believed she deserved a chance. The diner was unusually quiet, as if everyone around had sensed the weight of what was happening. The whispers began again, but this time they carried a tone of admiration rather than curiosity. Customers leaned toward each other, murmuring about the waitress who had been noticed by someone important. Maya finally found her voice. Even if I said yes, I wouldn't know where to start, she whispered. Daniel smiled reassuringly. That's where I come in. I can guide you, connect you with the right people, and provide the resources. All I ask is that you put your heart into it, just like you put your heart into helping my mother. Maya sat back, her mind spinning. She thought about all the nights she had stayed up, sketching ideas for her bakery on scraps of paper, only to tuck them away because reality demanded she focus on bills instead. She thought about her mother's words, telling her never to give up on her kindness or her dreams. For the first time, the dream didn't feel so far away. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice trembling. Say yes, Margaret urged softly, her eyes twinkling with hope. Maya laughed through her tears. Yes, she whispered finally. Yes, I'll try. Daniel's smile widened. Good. Then it's settled. We'll start planning soon. Margaret clapped her hands together like a child, her face beaming. Oh, this makes me so happy. You see, dear. Good things do come when you least expect them. The moment was so tender that even Carla, who usually kept her guard up, sniffled and muttered, well, about time someone noticed her worth. That afternoon, Maya returned to her work, but everything felt different. The same plates, the same coffee, the same tables, but she no longer felt invisible. She felt seen, valued, and for the first time in years, hopeful. When her shift ended, Daniel offered her a ride again. She hesitated but accepted. As they drove, Margaret hummed softly in the back seat, looking peaceful. Maya sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her mind alive with images of her future bakery. Bright windows, shelves full of bread, children laughing in a corner, people gathering together, all the things she had once thought were only daydreams. Daniel glanced at her and smiled. You deserve this, Maya, he said quietly. She turned to him, her heart swelling. Thank you, for believing in me. Daniel shook his head. No. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. That night, when Maya lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing, her heart still full. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, not just surviving but thriving. And she knew it had all begun with one simple choice: to stop, to care, to help a lost woman who needed her. Weeks passed, and life at the diner continued, but something inside Maya had shifted. Each time she served a plate or poured coffee, she carried a secret hope burning quietly in her heart. Daniel had kept his word. He called her on the phone after her shifts, asking about her ideas, encouraging her to write down everything she dreamed of for her bakery. At first, Maya hesitated to believe anything would really happen, but little by little, Daniel's steady confidence began to chip away at her doubts. One morning, Daniel returned to the diner, but this time he wasn't alone. he brought with him two people dressed in neat business clothes. They carried folders and spoke with calm assurance. Daniel introduced them as his partners, people who helped him manage his many investments. The sight of them sitting in a booth in the same humble diner made the regular customers whisper even louder than before. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Maya sat across from them nervously, her hands clasped together. Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Maya, I want you to meet them because they're going to help us take your vision and turn it into something real. You've told me about the big windows, the warm light, the shelves of bread and cakes. You've told me how you want people to feel when they walk inside like they've come home. Now we're going to design it together." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She could hardly believe this was happening. She showed them the notebook where she had scribbled her sketches and ideas. They studied it carefully, nodding with respect, not dismissing her thoughts as childish dreams. For the first time, professionals treated her ideas like they mattered. The process was not easy. After long shifts at the diner, Maya stayed up late at night, going through designs, talking on the phone with Daniel, and learning about things she had never imagined: leases, suppliers, ovens, permits. Some nights she felt overwhelmed and wondered if she was capable of any of it. But every time she doubted herself, she remembered Margaret's soft words, "Sometimes kindness comes back to you." Margaret herself became one of Maya's greatest sources of encouragement. Whenever Daniel visited the diner, he often brought his mother along. Margaret always greeted Maya with joy, asking about the progress and reminding her that she believed in her. The elderly woman's memory sometimes slipped, but her warmth never faded. She told everyone in the diner that Maya was her guardian angel. Those words spread quickly, and soon, even strangers began stopping by the diner to ask if the rumors were true. Was the waitress really opening her own bakery? Finally, after weeks of planning, Daniel took Maya to see a small shop space on the corner of a busy street in town. The moment she walked inside, she gasped. The place had big front windows, just like she had always imagined. Dust covered the counters, and the floors were bare, but Maya didn't see the flaws, she saw potential. She saw her dream standing right in front of her. "Do you like it?" Daniel asked, watching her closely. Maya turned in a slow circle, her heart racing. "I love it," she whispered. "Then it's yours," Daniel said simply. Her knees went weak. "Mine." "Yes. We'll renovate it, stock it, and get it ready. But this will be your bakery, Maya. Your name will be on the sign." She covered her mouth with her hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Live your dream," Daniel replied. "That's thanks enough." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of work. Construction crews came in to paint the walls and polish the floors. Shelves were built, ovens installed, and counters designed to match the sketches in Maya's notebook. She visited every day after work, sometimes staying late into the night just to breathe in the smell of fresh wood and paint, picturing the smell of bread and cinnamon rolls that would soon replace it. The day of the grand opening arrived at last. The town buzzed with excitement. A small crowd gathered outside the shop, curious to see what the waitress-turned-baker had created. A bright new sign hung above the door, "Maya's Home Bakery." The windows gleamed, and inside, rows of pastries and loaves sat waiting, each one baked by Maya with love and determination. Margaret was there, sitting proudly in the front row of the crowd, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore a soft lavender dress, her silver hair shining in the morning light. Daniel stood beside her, his suit immaculate as always, but his smile warmer than Maya had ever seen. The mayor of the town had even come, and after a few words, he handed Maya the ceremonial ribbon and scissors. Maya's hands trembled as she held them. She looked at the crowd: neighbors, friends, customers from the diner, even strangers who had heard her story. They all stood waiting, eyes shining with pride. She glanced at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. "Go on, dear," she said. "This is your moment." Maya took a deep breath, raised the scissors, and cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause. The doors opened, and people streamed inside, filling the air with laughter, chatter, and the sound of delight as they tasted her baked goods. Her co-worker Carla was among the first to buy a slice of cake. She hugged Maya tightly and whispered, "I was wrong. You didn't waste your kindness. Look where it brought you." Maya smiled through tears. It was never wasted. Inside, Daniel walked with Margaret to the counter, where Maya stood proudly behind her display of pastries. Margaret reached for her hand again, her eyes glistening. "You did it, my dear," she whispered. "You really did it?" Maya nodded, unable to speak through the lump in her throat. As the day went on, the bakery filled with customers. Some bought bread to take home, others stayed to enjoy coffee and cake at the small tables by the windows. The sunlight streamed through, just as Maya had always imagined. Children sat in the reading corner she had created, flipping through storybooks while their parents smiled nearby. The space buzzed with warmth and life, exactly as she had dreamed. When the crowd began to thin in the late afternoon, Daniel approached Maya. She wiped flour from her hands and smiled at him. "I don't think I've ever been this happy," she admitted. "You deserve it," he said softly. "You gave kindness freely, and the world gave it back." She looked around her bakery, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Daniel. Not just for this, but for seeing me." Daniel shook his head gently. "No, Maya. Thank you for reminding me that the greatest wealth isn't in money, but in people like you who carry kindness in their hearts." That evening, as Maya locked the doors to her bakery for the first time, she stood in the quiet shop and breathed in the sweet smell of bread and sugar. She thought back to that night when she had first seen Margaret, lost and afraid. She had no idea then how much her life was about to change. All she had done was stop to help someone in need. That one small act had opened the door to everything she had ever dreamed of. And as she turned off the lights and looked at the glowing sign outside Maya's home bakery, she knew this was only the beginning.